The remains of two Native American children will be returned to South Dakota from more than 1,000 miles away in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Now, the boys were among thousands of children sent to the Carlisle Indian Industrial School in the late 1800s, where they died.
However, as KELOLAND's Lauren Solik shows us in tonight's investigation into the laws involved, returning the boys to tribal land is a complicated task.
Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate historian Tamara St. John has spent more than half a decade researching two young boys who died at the Carlisle Indian Industrial School in the late 1800s, Amos Laframboise and Edward Upright.
They were sent there because they were our best and brightest. They were amazing students.
Her research began in hopes of one day returning the boys' remains home to the Lake Traverse Reservation in South Dakota. Laframboise and Upright are buried at this Pennsylvania cemetery along with 180 other Native American students who died at the school between 1879 and 1918. Kill the Indian, save the man was the premise behind the start of the school, according to the National Park Service. Students were forced to speak English, wear uniforms, and give up their culture and beliefs. In an effort to right that wrong, the U.S. Army is working with families and tribes of the students buried at the Carlisle Barracks Post Cemetery to honor their wishes. In some cases, that means bringing them home to tribal land. In July 2021, 9 students from the Rosebud Sioux tribe were returned home from Carlisle in a caravan, making stops for ceremonies along the way. St. John hopes for a similar homecoming for Laframboise, son of a Sisseton Wahpeton founding father, and Upright, son of a Spirit Lake Nation chief. St. John recalls a conversation she had with an elder discussing the two boys.
No matter what you do, you bring them home in a buffalo robe. You bring them home like the chiefs that they are. And I made that promise that day to do that.
But keeping that promise has been difficult.
The Army chooses to assert their military cemetery policy. And their military cemetery policy is essentially a disinterment, much like any serviceman in any other, and then the transfer ceremony to that next of kin.
Army Regulation 290-5 states those requesting disinterment must submit notarized statements by all close living relatives of the deceased, stating they have no objection to the disinterment.
But how do you find the next of kin to a child that died in 1879 with no children at the age of 13 or 14?
That's where St. John's research comes into play. She found the closest living relatives of both of the boys. The families signed affidavits and the papers were sent off with high hopes. But then, silence.
The Army ceased to communicate with me after 6 years of working on this issue, one-on-one. All of a sudden, they didn't even alert me, my office, or my Chairman Hopkins at the time, that they were going to deny disinterment for that year.
St. John says the denial letter was sent to the next of kin elders, with the Army stating they viewed the disinterments as family matters.
That elder, that really their only intention was to help us as a tribe. They're under the Army's policy. That means by signing that paper that they have to accept this huge responsibility of arranging their travel, funding it, and then being reimbursed and all of these things.
Frustrated, St. John turned to the Native American Rights Fund for help.
We sent a letter to the Army on behalf of the tribes stating that we wish to now repatriate our children using NAGPRA under the NAGPRA process.
NAGPRA, or the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, states the tribe could request the disinterment and be consulted on the repatriation back to tribal land. However, at the end of May, a federal notice was sent out stating Laframboise and Upright would be disinterred this coming September, a decision St. John says the tribe was not a part of. In the notice, the Office of Army Cemeteries says transportation and burials in private cemeteries will take place as soon as practical after the disinterment.
The feeling is like, on behalf of the families, that they're going to disinter them. Who's going to be there? Do they know? You know, do we know? Are we prepared? What are you doing with our child? That's really the way it feels, without talking to us. And yeah, I can't think of a more horrible, disrespectful way of doing something. I think anybody would object to that.
In an emailed statement, a spokesperson for the Office of Army Cemeteries said they encourage coordination with the tribes in support of families with children being returned. They went on to say they've reached out to the Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate Tribal Historic Preservation Officer to begin planning for LaFramboise's disinterment, but hadn't received a response as of June 16th. Now, if the Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate were given the chance to create a plan with the Army to bring home the remains of LaFramboise and Upright, St. John said they already have a number of details they would like to see fulfilled, including a stop here. What are now the powwow grounds for the tribe are the last grounds the two young boys would have stepped on in their home as they knew it.
In bringing them home, we want to bring them back to the site where they left, where the last place where they saw people that loved them, the last place that their feet touched ground that they called home, and to bring them back here into our community where our families as a whole will be able to, you know, hold each other, cry together, to, you know, remember them and to honor them in the right way.
St. John says the families would help select the next steps, perhaps burying the two boys next to their fathers with a traditional scaffolding burial like the one depicted here.
There will be tears. I am afraid of that. I'm afraid of that for that elder that would sign an affidavit. I'm afraid of that for them to experience that alone, that we have to be there for them. And that the one thing that I could say when we address horrible, hard, painful history is that we address it together. We as a community, as bigger families, and as tribes.
With KELOLAND Investigates, I'm Lauren Solich.
The spokesperson for the Office of Army Cemetery says that the tribal representatives for each of the 28 children returned since 2016 have accompanied families to Carlisle Barracks for the disinterment of their loved ones. To read the full statement from the Office of Army Cemeteries, including their views on the NAGPRA process, visit the story on KELOLAND.com.